Just Mercy is a 2019 American biographical legal drama film co-written and directed by Destin Daniel Cretton and starring Michael B. Jordan. In 1989, Harvard Law graduate Bryan Stevenson travels to Alabama, intending to help defend poor people who cannot afford proper legal representation. Teaming with Eva Ansley, he forms the Equal Justice Initiative in the state capital, Montgomery. He embarks on trying to combat social injustices in criminal law and practice, which has resulted in a high rate of African Americans convicted and incarcerated in the state and nationwide. Stevenson goes to a state prison to meet inmates who are on death row and who are seeking appeals of their convictions or sentences. Among these is Walter "Johnny D. McMillian, an African American man who was convicted of the 1986 murder of Rhonda Morrison, an 18-year-old white girl. McMillian has maintained his innocence. When Stevenson reviews the evidence in the case, he learns that it hinges entirely on the testimony of convicted felon Ralph Myers. The convict had provided highly contradictory testimony to the prosecution in exchange for a plea deal and lighter sentence in his own pending trial. Given these issues, Stevenson appeals to the current prosecutor, Tommy Chapman, for aid. Chapman dismisses him without looking at Stevenson's notes. Stevenson learns that, at the time of the murder, McMillian's family friend Darnell Houston was elsewhere with a witness who had subsequently falsely corroborated Myers' testimony. This evidence would cause the prosecution's case to fall apart, and Stevenson asks Houston to testify to his account. When Stevenson submits Houston's testimony, police arrest Houston for perjury. Although Stevenson gets the perjury charges dismissed, Houston is intimidated and refuses to testify in court. Shortly afterward, Stevenson is threatened by two sheriff deputies, who force him from his car at gunpoint and illegally search the car. They refuse to tell him why he was pulled over, but release him. During this period, Stevenson had a case on appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court on behalf of another death row inmate, Herbert Lee Richardson. The court denied the appeal. Convicted of killing his ex-girlfriend's niece with a bomb on her porch, Richardson had been sentenced to death by electric chair. Unable to overturn this, Stevenson promised to be with Richardson in his final moments and witnesses the execution. On behalf of McMillian, Stevenson directly confronts Myers. He admits that police coerced his testimony by threatening him with a death sentence. Stevenson appeals to the local court to grant McMillian a retrial and successfully convinces Myers to recant his testimony on the stand, but the judge refuses to grant a retrial. Stevenson appears on 60 Minutes to rally public support in favor of McMillian, and appeals the court's decision to the Supreme Court of Alabama. The Supreme Court overturns the circuit court's decision, and grants McMillian a retrial. Stevenson tries to have the charges dismissed entirely. He confronts Chapman at home and tries to convince him to join in this motion. Chapman forces him to leave. On the day of the motion, Stevenson appeals to the judge. That day Chapman joins him in the motion. The judge dismisses the charges, and McMillian is finally released from prison and reunited with his family. An epilogue notes that Stevenson and Ansley continue their fight for justice. McMillian remained friends with Stevenson until his natural death in 2013. A follow-up investigation into Morrison's 1986 murder confirmed McMillian's innocence. Evidence suggested that a white man was likely responsible, but the case has never been officially solved. McMillian's former cellmate, Anthony Ray Hinton, remained on death row for 28 years. Stevenson handled his defense and was eventually able to get all the charges dropped. Hinton was released in 2015.